with Firehouse Music, and today I want to talk to you about something that kind of bothers me. There was a joke that used to kind of go around about guitar players, like how to get them to slow down. So you put some sheet music in front of them, and that always bothered me because music theory and sheet music is not that hard. If you can count to 8, if you can memorize a phone number, you're smart enough to understand music theory, and we're going to talk about that today. So we're going to start at the very beginning, and hopefully this will turn into a series depending on how you guys receive it. If you're interested in it and you want to hear more about it, I will continue with the series, and I'll take it as far as you guys want. So for now, we're going to start at the very beginning. So we're going to start with the staff. All right, so what is the staff? The staff is 5 lines. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. As you can see, they don't have to be straight. 5 lines and 4 spaces, right? Because you have 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces in 5 lines. And before we get into clefs and all the stuff that gives the staff meaning and all of that, I want you to understand the staff as a graph, right? So if you've taken just basic math, you know that you have a y-axis and an x-axis, right? Your y-axis is going to be your pitch. Pitch, which is the same as frequency. So whether a sound is low in frequency or high, that's your pitch. And the higher in frequency it is, the higher it's going to be on the staff, and vice versa. The lower it is in frequency, the lower it's going to be on the staff. Okay? And your x-axis is going to be time. So the further to the right the event is, the later in time it's going to happen. Okay? So that's fairly simple. So the staff is a representation of sound. When I am not, because we have other systems on guitar, we have tablature, and we'll talk about that later. Right now we're talking about standard notation. And in standard notation, one of the beautiful things about it is that it's a representation of sound. I'm telling you, make this sound specifically. I don't care how you make it. You can make it with your guitar, you can sing it, you can play it if you can sing. You can play it on the piano, you can play it on a violin, on a trumpet, it doesn't matter. You can make the same sound. So as long as it's the same sound, then that's all that matters. So it gives a platform or a language to communicate with musicians across all instruments, which I think is great. That was one of the things that drew me to it. And one of the reasons why I studied it, because I wanted to speak the language of music. And learning how to read is a lot like learning how to read English. And we'll get to that maybe in future videos. So if you have an event, right? Could be a dot there. And you have another one here. By looking at this, you can infer that this is lower than this, and that this happens before this. You don't need any musical training to know that. You just look at that graph, and that's what that is. So it's very simple. Now, let's get to the specifics. So if we, I don't have any eraser, so ghetto. All right, if we're trying to give the staff meaning, that's when the symbols called clefs come into play. And without going into too much detail, what the clef does is it fixes the pitch on which you start your staff, right? So if I use one of the most common ones in the clef that we use on guitar is the treble clef. This is also known as a G clef, okay? And it's known as a G clef because you see how it starts on the second line, comes up, and goes down, right? It makes like a little X on the second line because that second line is a G note, okay? I'm going to backtrack for a second because you may not know, like, well, what the heck is a G? What does that mean? In music, we call the different notes or the different pitches, the different tones, as using 7 letters of the alphabet. Those letters are A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. Okay? And these notes or these letters coincide with the white keys on the piano. So if you have ever seen a piano, right? So I'm not the best artist, as you can tell, but let's say that this is a piano. So we have this, let me get that there, out there, this, that, see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And you will have noticed also that there are black keys in the middle. So we have this one here, and we have this one here, right? And then there's nothing here. And then we have another one here, another black key right here, black key here, and let me add one more. And there's nothing there. So these white keys correspond to these letters. So this is C right here, D, E, F, G, A, B, and we're back to C, right? And we'll talk about the black keys in a little bit. For now, essentially, just know that we have these notes in between the letters that don't really have names. We don't have a name for them. But we access them using accidentals. And accidentals are the sharps and the flats, if you know what that is. If you don't know, don't worry about it. I'll explain that later. So, kind of hold that there. And so now let's look at the letters right here. So if this is G on my clef. So if you remember, I made an X right here. This is the G clef, so that tells you that that's a G right there. So if I move up, I follow the alphabet. Now the problem is that G is the last letter. So where do I go from there? I go back. So then G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And I can continue on. I can add letters to the staff. Those are called ledger lines, but that's not important. You can just keep adding notes to the staff. A, B, C, D, E, and so on, forever. And I can go down as well. So G, below that, I go backwards now. So, right? So just like the sobriety test. G, F, E, D, C, B, A. So you just keep going down. G, F, E, below that, D, below that, C, below that, B, below that, A, and so on. I can just keep adding lines, ledger lines below the staff, and it's going to continue to advance that way. Okay, so that's how the staff works. Now, if I change the clef, that's the thing. If I change the clef, the meaning of the staff changes. So this is a very powerful symbol, because if all of a sudden I change it to say the bass clef. I really need to get an eraser here. A bass clef, which is this symbol right here. Well, now the notes on the staff, I think, yeah, there, are all going to be different now. Because, wait, it should have been up here. That's what I get for not drawing it before putting the lines on. Because now, this is an F. The bass clef is also known as the F clef. So now this is an F. So now all my notes move. So now I have a G right here, and an A right here, and a B right here. The middle C is right here. And below that I have E, D, C, B, A, G. And it keeps going that way. And there are mnemonics that you can use to remember all these things, and we'll talk about that later. And there's one more clef that's common, and that is the alto clef or C clef. See, anybody plays the viola, they're familiar with this clef. And it looks something like this. And in this case, this is a C. You see? So then this is D, this is E, F, G, A. Below that, B, A, G, F, E, and so on. So that's how you denote or you interpret what the staff says. Now, how that corresponds to the guitar, of course, that's something that we're going to talk about in the future, otherwise this video will take forever. And that's just one element, right? This is the element of pitch, or the notes, the sounds that you're going to make on the guitar. So I think this is a good stopping point. You're just going to take a look at this, study it, think about it, and post any questions you have on the comments, and I'll shape the videos that way. If I need to explain or expand on something, I'll post future videos explaining that. And yeah, I think this is enough for today. So just keep that in mind. This is going to be necessary for you to understand some of the future concepts. I know it's a little bit slow right now, but just bear with me. We get through these fundamentals first, and then we'll move on to the more advanced concepts. Just like always, don't forget to subscribe on the button down there. See you guys next time.